We'll call this meeting to order. Can I ask Councilman Brewer?
If you lower your heads, please. Lord, thank you for bringing us together today in a spirit of generosity. May we honor one another by keeping an open mind. May we voice our truth and listen with an open heart. May we discern your will to unite in fruitful outcome. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. God bless.
Thank you all. Okay, the rules of decorum will be enforced and part of this process. Agenda approval, I'm going to look for a motion for agenda approval.
I'll be moving several things from the consent agenda to the main agenda. Items 8.3, 8.4,
Jumping ahead.
and 8.2, sorry. 8.2 through 8.4. Thank you.
8.2, 3, and 4? 4?
8.2, 8.3, 8.4.
Okay. Okay. We'll go into the proclamation.
Oh, we got to move to approve.
Okay. Can I move to approve?
So I'd like to move to approve the agenda with the changes to the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, we need a separate motion to remove the items from the consent agenda. So what you're doing is okay, but we need to go, hey, make motion to remove 8, 2, 3, and 4, then you can do the agenda approval if you want. Or wait, you can wait till you get to the consent agenda. You can do that if you want.
Wait till we get to this.
Either way.
Fair enough. Let's go ahead and do that. That procedure is fine. So I'll move to approve the agenda as provided.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, at this point, we would like to make a proclamation celebrating the service of Commissioner Dennis Bailey.
Dennis in here? Did he step out? Oh, there he is. Come on up, Commissioner. I think actually they're going to turn that towards me so they can hear it.
Okay.
So, read this. I'll see if I can do it in one good, clear reading. Proclamation of Appreciation. Whereas we are here today to express our gratitude and honor Dennis Bailey and his service to Rockwall County as Rockwall County Commissioner starting in January 2009 until his retirement in 2024. Whereas Dennis Bailey, as County Commissioner, negotiated an interlocal agreement with the cities of Rockwall County to join an interoperability radio network. Did I say that correct? Yes. Which enables different radio systems to communicate in real time, crucial to public safety and emergency response. Whereas Commissioner Bailey, at the request of Rockwall County, has acted as negotiator and owner's representative for the construction of the county courthouse and county jail facility. Whereas during his time as commissioner, he not only secured funding for various road, bridge, and transportation projects in the county, but he also elected and served on the public power pool for governmental entities in the state of Texas by the communities of urban counties. He served on the board for 16 years and today serves as vice chairman. Whereas Dennis Bailey has been a longtime resident of Rockwall County and was key in establishing Rockwall County Court Number 2 and the district court for the county. He also served as mayor of Heath before becoming commissioner, where his integrity, grace, and principles serve to uplift and guide that community, as with ours, through the challenges they have faced. Now therefore, I, in this case it says Dan Tucker, who is presiding, Mayor Pro Tem of the City of McLendon-Chisholm, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby present you this proclamation of appreciation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we got toys that we all.
We would also like to present you with a sign embellishing your name on Boulevard. Yeah, great. Thank you. You can get it on. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for your service. Yes, sir. Shall we all come up and get a picture?
Let's get a picture with the commissioner.
Please. Yeah. Hey, Lloyd.
This way. One more. Everybody say Bailey.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so let's go on. Okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and go to citizens' comments. And let's see, John Warm.
So, okay. John Warham, 1515 Rapasso Way, McLendon-Chisholm. I'm going to keep it short. Given that there's 4 people on this council who are not running for re-election, and your terms expire in May, I'm going to recommend strongly that it would be appropriate that none of you make any decisions that increase our taxes in any way, and also cease and desist running up legal fees. So in other words, stop talking to lawyers, let that go, because we're going to get stuck with that bill. So that is my recommendation to you. I think it's reasonable, and that's what I have to say.
Thank you, John. Bev Stevens?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Good evening, Council. I am in receipt of a letter from a citizen who asked it to be read tonight and go into the record. Dear Mayor McNeil, I am writing to express my deep disappointment regarding the actions of certain council members who appear to be pursuing personal agendas that do not reflect the will of the citizens of McLendon-Chisholm. It is disheartening to witness elected officials making decisions that not only go against the wishes of the community, but also contradict the guidance of the city's legal counsel and your leadership. These actions have resulted in unnecessary legal expenses funded by taxpayer dollars that do not serve the best interests of our residents. The people of McLendon-Chisholm deserve a city council that prioritizes the needs of the community over personal motives, upholds the rule of law, and works in alignment with the values and priorities of those who elect them. If any council members are unwilling to act in accordance with the will of the people, I respectfully urge them to reconsider their positions and step down so that individuals who are committed to genuine public service may take their place. Our community expects and deserves leadership that operates with transparency, integrity, and accountability. Mayor McNeil, I appreciate your continued efforts to represent and advocate for the best interests of our city, and I hope to see corrective actions taken to ensure that taxpayer resources are not misused and that the voices of our residents are truly represented. Thank you for your time and attention to this matter. I look forward to your response and to seeing leadership that reflects the true values of McLendon-Chisholm. Sincerely, Carol Williams, 1454 Via Toscana Lane.
Thank you, Bev. And then the last would be Bev, again, Bev Stevens, on behalf of Cindy Zeman.
Zeman. Ms. Zeman also sent a letter in today and asked it to be read into record. Dear Mr. Mayor, I would like this message on the record, please. Council members Easter Day, McLendon, and Mayor Pro Tem Tucker need to stop their nonsense with interfering with our water. They are not helping, and their actions are negative towards the citizens of McLendon-Chisholm, and especially problematic for those of us on public streets. They each need to stop spending money that does not belong to them and that they don't have authority to spend. I am not okay with their actions, secretive behavior, lack of fiduciary responsibility, and adding the cost of their actions to my bill. How is any of that legal or allowed to continue? Frankly, since they don't have authority to obligate the city of McLendon-Chisholm to spend dollars on attorney consultations without going through the established and proper city process, then they should be held responsible for paying those fees out of their own pockets. Unless, of course, there is a greater good for the citizens to not pursuing that option for those 4 council members. Thank you, and God bless you and the honest work you're doing for all the citizens of McLendon-Chisholm. Respectfully, Cindy Zeman.
Thank you, Bev. Item number 7 will be statement from the mayor, but the mayor is not here, obviously, so we'll push on to the consent agenda. And at this point, can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda as written or modified?
I'd like to modify it, just move items 2, 3, and 8.2, 8.3, and 8.4 to the main agenda so that we can have discussions about it.
Okay, so we would separate those out individually, and then as for the remainder, which would be 8.1, 8.5, can we make a motion to accept those?
Yeah, I move that we approve the remainder of the consent agenda.
Okay, 8.1, 8.5, can I get a second?
Real fast, it's a motion to approve, to remove 8, 2, 3, and 4 and approve the rest, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just making sure, thanks.
So make a motion, can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda's items number 8.1, 8.5?
I'll second.
Okay. And can we get a vote to approve?
Yeah, I mean,
I approve.
Okay. Aye.
Aye.
Good. So we'll move to items number 8.2.
8.2, acknowledge and approve the termination of the license agreement with Blackland Water Supply.
Okay. Can I get a motion to open this up for discussion?
I'll make a motion to open this up to discussion.
I'll second it. Okay. So I'll go ahead and start the discussion on this. This came up as part of the consent agenda last time we were here.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
I may have missed it, but I don't think we even had a vote on the motion. And since you're chairing the meeting this time, you can't second or make motions. You can only entertain them because you're chairing the meeting. You're an entertainer. Think of yourself as an entertainer for the meeting.
My best on that.
so are we without a motion, or are we with a motion? I guess you've lost me.
So can I get a motion?
Mr. Easter made the motion to begin the discussion of 8.2.
I second.
So we can start the discussion then.
Yes.
Okay, can we get a vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Am I missing? Something? Are we going to discuss this? Okay, so Bev, do you want to address this this item? Were you prepared to address this item? Okay.
This item came to us from Blackland Water Supply, who has requested that we acknowledge and approve the termination of the licensing agreement for Sonoma Verde Phases 3 and 5. Taylor Duncan has already approved their licensing agreement being canceled with Blackland Water Supply. So there is a document attached here that we just need to approve and acknowledge to cancel the licensing agreement for Phases 3 and 5.
Okay, this came up last time, did it not, on the agenda? And it was also included in the consent agenda as well? And we took that out and put it, and made it a separate item for discussion. And at that point in time, I think what we requested was the contract itself, not just the termination portion of that. We did make that request.
All I remember is asking for what you were approving, which was the termination and not the actual contract.
I think we asked for the contract itself, and it may have been a miscommunication.
And
And
if
so
it was, I apologize for that.
it
Because
may have just been. I don't know. I'd have to go back. With that being said, that's really not important. I think what's important, and the mayor even made this point himself last time he was here, is that for purposes of transparency, we would like to see that contract. And I think I also made that point. So we would like to have the contract embedded in the packet the next time out for that.
Okay.
And I think that's going to translate over to item number 8.3 as well with the MOU, because we don't have that in the packet as well.
that is correct. So you want to move these to the next agenda?
I'm going to open up to the discussion, but
Okay.
me preferentially, yes, I would like to have those other items or portions of those contracts specifically provided, so it's exposed to the public. Any other discussion on this, Mike?
No, I think having all of the documents available just kind of enhances the record, and if folks want to look at it to understand what's going on, and not to make this a big deal or nothing, just having everything out there is always helpful.
Yeah, I don't think we're trying to make a big deal out of this as well. I think what we're trying to do is, like I said, be transparent with the folks. They should be exposed to the entire contract, and whatever our vote may be, it would be reflective of what's existent in that contract, and we've made our decisions thereon.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Tucker, if I may add something.
Yes, ma'am.
This license agreement and the MOU were approved in the court hearing on Friday, and the suit between Blackland and RCH was dismissed by the judge.
I understand that.
Okay.
So we'll go on to item 8.4.
Consider approval of an ordinance for no smoking.
Yeah, it would seem that we'd have to have a motion to move that out, and as part of that, I think it would be prudent to what Bev just said, the court hearing and the findings included within it, so that there's a complete record of this whole issue available. I think that
If it helps too, I think what's going on here, a lot of this is the courtesy also to Blackland. They've been dismissed from the lawsuit. They're not lawsuit. The MOU is not binding anyway. There's no legal binding anyway. And then there's plenty of time, on Sonoma 3 and 5. So if they don't want to service Sonoma 3 and 5, it really doesn't do anything. It's really more of a courtesy to Blackland to go ahead and just vote to agree to the termination. We won't gain anything by withholding our agreement on the termination.
I think the question though that's before us is just to have all the documentation in front of us so we know what it is, right?
Yeah, just for completeness, I think it'd be helpful to have the whole package, that's all.
So can we postpone this, Mr. Hollett, until we don't need to take a vote? All we need to do is postpone it?
Absolutely not. Yeah, if you just want to say, hey, look, we'd like to see it on the next agenda, then we can put it on the next agenda.
Just give direction
So
to
do we have to
staff.
move? Do we have to move to table?
I don't like that because from what I understand, we're not even sure. If you do to the table it, then you got to make sure to remember to untable it, which half the time people forget to do. And then what happens if you cancel that meeting and then it's a hassle, it's a pain. I just like to say, hey, look, direct staff to make sure it's on the next agenda with the 2 attachments.
So let's move on to item number 8.4.
8.3 was
Yes, 8.3, 8.2, and 8.3 are being put aside until we can have complete documentation provided.
Okay. 8.4, consider approval of an ordinance for no smoking or vaping in public buildings.
I'll make a motion to consider approval of an ordinance for no smoking or vaping in a public building.
I'll second.
Okay, we'll open this for discussion. Or City Administrator?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Tucker.
Yes, ma'am.
This ordinance is something that a lot of cities in Texas have already passed, which it would go in place for health and safety reasons. And with the increase in our commercial and retail that is proposed for our city, I would strongly encourage the council to consider this ordinance. For existing businesses, it gives them a certain period of time to comply, but for new businesses, there would be no inside smoking or within 30 feet outside of the building. This does not affect private residences at all.
Okay, we'll open this for discussion.
Yeah, as a general matter, I think from a public health perspective, trying to minimize indoors or minimize smoking in general and indoor in particular is not a bad idea. And I think going along with that is vaping as well. So it sounds like it's a reasonable consideration, particularly if a number of other cities have enacted a similar or comparable ordinance. The only question I would kind of have on something like this is on the definition of vaping is, does this possibly affect someone if there's a medical reason for delivering medication by inhaling something, if it would cover that? Not to make a mountain out of a molehill, but is that an issue?
That's what you do, though, right?
Well, you got to look around and say, is this going to create a problem?
I believe that's an exemption in there if there's a medical reason to do that, because that's pretty standard. So, I mean, this will still allow, as City Administrator said, this still allows Councilmember McLennan to have his cognac and a cigar in his backyard. There's no problem with that.
Well, I'd second that. But no, that's fine. Thank you.
That's a great segue into what I was about to talk about. I noticed in section 8.10.002C, and under the exceptions, that cigar lounges are not included. Could we get that included?
We can, if you council wants to add that, we
Council,
can.
can I re-ask what was the question, or what was the specific location in the code?
It's 002.
002, okay,
C,
thank you.
exceptions.
Got it, I'm looking at it here. Under subsection 1 or 2? Oh, no, I see where you're looking at. Okay, I got it, thank you.
Or as Congressman, I'm foretelling the future. Councilmember Brewer stated hookah lounge as well.
Or if you own a vape shop, right? They're everywhere now.
You can still sell the product, you just can't use it on premises, which would be the same thing as a cigar lounge. They can sell the product, they can't smoke it on premises.
But I mean, that's the whole premise of having a cigar lounge, is to go and.
I understand.
Both 9 and 6, public restrooms, lobbies, reception areas, hallways, and any other common use area. And then also 9, it's prohibiting it. It's under the places where smoking is prohibited, businesses. So a cigar lounge would be a business, so that would be prohibited. I want to make sure I guess Ace is not here. I just want to make sure that we don't have a conflict with our zoning ordinance too, that we may need to fix. If something is allowed to be used as a cigar lounge, then I need to go back and change the zoning ordinance too. I don't think we've got any cigar lounges in the city, so it won't be affecting anybody, but it would prohibit it in the future. Well, then look, states taking more ways to screw us over, so somebody's come and slips in a non-conforming use, and we've got to pay them pretty much what they want. If you look at the new stupid House bill by our wonderful, intelligent state legislatures, that's sarcasm if you didn't know, but that will conflict with this if it's in our zoning ordinance, so we'll just go back and look and make sure. That's all. I mean, I think it's covered under businesses. It's a business, but we can, if you want to specifically put. The only thing is, and we run off to Stanford, you go to law school there, they'll teach you all this stuff because they're good, they know what they're doing. If you get too specific, then you run the risk of cutting out too much. Let me give you an example. If you want to exclude apples, it's easier just to say we exclude apples. If you start going, hey, we want to exclude green apples, yellow apples, and red apples, then that means the statement and the way the law would read it is, well, that doesn't include blue apples, purple apples, yellow apples, or anything like that. So if we start saying cigar lounges, well, mine's a cigar bar. It's not a cigar lounge, or this or that. It's a business. So we're prohibiting smoking. Does that make sense? So we're prohibiting smoking in businesses. So if you run a business, you're not allowed to smoke in them.
Exactly. So that's why we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't care about, like, we can get into semantics about lounges, bars, whatever. The premise of a location to smoke a cigar, whatever the name is, should be exempt. They should be exempt if we decide to allow them to come into our city. So I'm saying, can we add that to the exceptions, like we're adding an adult only entertainment?
You mean a cigar lounge? Yes, you can. But what I'm saying is if you do that, you possibly run the risk of, if someone says, and they will be semantic, law is about semantics. If they say, I'm not putting, if we outlaw cigar lounges and they're putting in what they're calling a cigar bar and they define it and set up as a cigar bar, arguably this ordinance wouldn't apply to that. I think we're covered with cigar lounge or cigar bar or cigar pit stop or whatever you want to call it by businesses. I think we're covered. But if y'all want to put cigar lounges in there, look, my job is to give you advice and let y'all make the decisions. So whatever decision you want to make, we'll do it. We can put cigar lounge if you want, but again, that's the risk that we run if somebody else comes in and tweaks it a little bit and it's not a cigar lounge, then the ordinance won't apply to them.
Okay, you're reading too. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Got it. I understand.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all I got.
My concerns were very similar to what Floyd's were just now, and you kind of spoken out pretty well. The other question is what about things like, chewing tobacco? Not covered at all, right? So there's things in here that I think we should revisit. I think just modern or a few modifications will tweak this and make this passable. I don't know if it's ripe enough just at this moment to do it. So let's maybe tweak it, fix it, and bring it back maybe in 2 weeks. I mean,
how would you like to tweak it? Now you got to be careful about chewing tobacco. You take away a man's chewing tobacco, you might as well take his horse. This is Texas, and his gun. I mean,
Well, if this is about health and safety, then
Well,
I think there's another issue there, of course, a moral issue. But,
well, you tell us. I mean, if y'all want to tweak it, like I said, y'all make the decision. How would you want us to tweak the ordinance?
Is there any comments on tweaking the ordinance, or Paul, are you the only one who wants to modify and amend this?
I'm not prepared to vote for.
Okay.
Me personally, I don't want to vote on it today. I'd like to see it tweaked and brought back.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead and, hate to postpone another item, but to postpone it until the next time out, and during that interim, then any of the council can put in some comments, and Councilman Day specifically maybe conjure up something that he wants to add, and then we'll pursue that and just bring it back, and we'll have a vote on that.
Yeah, I think my
If you
motto,
feel uncomfortable with it being as it's written now.
it's not that I'm uncomfortable with it. I mean, I detest smoking and stuff like this, but the concern that I have is that the tweaks would take up too much time today. It's just easier to just bring it back
Okay.
2 weeks past it, you know.
So can we have that done then? Okay. Let's push on. Items for discussion and action, 9.1.
Discuss and consider acceptance of FY 2024 city audited financial statements.
Thank you, council. I would like to turn this over to our financial director, Jeff White.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Tonight we have in the audience with us one of our auditors from MCPA. We engaged them to do our annual audit this year, and they've completed it. They're here to present it to you. And staff recommends that you accept the audit. And Kyle, if you would. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, council, members of the audience. For those of you who don't know me, I see some new faces, but my name's Kyle Alice. I'm a CPA at the auditing firm, as Jeff had mentioned, MCPA. And so we'll just kind of go over, as many of you probably have in the packet, it's a very thick report. We won't go into details and the ingredients of how the cake is baked. We'll just go through the high levels and make sure we get any questions addressed. As you start off, we just kind of want to give a special shout out to Ray Smith. He's the city CPA, third-party accountant, and when we do a lot of these with small cities, nonprofits, any kind of organization, we usually have quite a bit of adjustments that we've got to make and discussions that we've got to make with people in that organization. And with this and how the city's books were, they were kept in very good shape, and that's a testament to his work ethic and his team. So thank you. It makes our audit a lot easier to go through and have information on it. So thank you, Ray. So the key highlights to go through the table of contents. The main piece is the independent auditor's report, which is page 3 of the report itself. What that basically outlines is the opinion that we had as the auditors, where we basically come in and say that there is everything's presented fairly in regards to generally accounting principles. It's an unqualified opinion, and it basically means that it's a clean audit. Everything's good to go. That just kind of outlines the basis for our opinion, the responsibility of management, and our responsibility as the auditor. We'll continue on. The next piece, what's always a good thing to look at when you're looking at these reports, is the MD&A, which is the management discussion and analysis. That basically gives a good highlight of what happened within the fiscal year for the city. It kind of describes in detail the financial statements a little bit more on that regards. So stuff that you guys probably should already know. I mean, we're about 6 months separated from when this report was finalized. So if you've got questions as we go through this, just let me know. We'll continue on. Basically, still in the MD&A, page 9, if you guys are following along. That basically has another little snapshot of comparative information, fiscal year 23 compared to fiscal year 24, and those categories, how they break it up into the governmental activities and business type activities. Once we move past that, we kind of get into the meat of the statement of financials. And this basically kind of outlines the statement of net assets, which is on page 12, goes through and breaks down into the different types of financials, the primary government. The next page is the program revenue piece. But you can kind of see here through that out the separation of government activities, business type activities, and the assets and liabilities, and the increase of net assets this fiscal year. Kind of the same thing, just more detailed reports and reconciliations of how we make sure the fund balances roll forward through the different entities. Once we get to another good one to look at is always on page 20, the statement of cash flows. That really gives you an idea of, okay, what came in for the proprietary fund, what went out, and what was increased or decreased, and the cash available at the end of the year. Page 20, we hop into the notes to the financial statements. Really, the first piece is always just a lot of accounting jargon. I don't want to bore you with that, but that kind of just outlines how these financials are presented, what is kind of classified as certain assets, liabilities, how you guys book revenue, all these types of things in detail. The one I'd kind of just point out as we get to page 26, it's always kind of breakdown of the deposits and investments. You see kind of how liquidity-wise where cash is sitting, what it's in, the breakdown, and the percentage of what is in those different buckets. The next page after that, page 27, is always a good one. It shows really the capital assets activity for the government and business. There was some little bit of increase for the fiscal year 24, and I think everybody kind of has an understanding. It was the fire truck, the tanker, and that addition, and then nothing added on the business type, which is typically all the infrastructure assets that are added when a different phase of the PID comes about. The next page, too, same kind of thing, shows the outline of payments, long-term debt for the bond of what we have for the City Hall. The next 10 pages, it's if you can understand it, God bless you, because it's the retirement disclosure, and it's a beast. So that's one of the things that is requirement, but the good news is most of our TMRS issues a lot of that, and they go through an audit. So a lot of the stuff that they come through is what's reported on your guys' financials. Other than that, we just mentioned the ARPA funds that have come through, and then what's left. And the last little piece is the required supplement reports, and that just goes through kind of the budget to actuals and comparison for the different entities. I say entities, it's the funds that go through it, and then there is the also disclosure for the retirement report. Any questions, comments, concerns? Like I said, everything was great when we went through it. It's always great to have, again, somebody else that's communicating with us throughout the year, letting us know on stuff that isn't surprises as we go along, because that can make out and drag out a lot of this audit to where if we have an understanding and we have an idea of what we're getting into as we're leading up to the audit, it makes it a lot easier to target and find areas that we need to make sure that we're looking at and documenting.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Not myself.
Yeah, question on page number 27 with respect to capital assets, activity, governmental. There's an infrastructure line item. Is there any breakout of where that is? What is included in that $12 billion number?
I'll have to find the detail on what the governmental piece is. I think part of it is, I think part of it is the PID assets as well, and how it's split up, like potentially roads, stuff that isn't necessarily utilized on the business side, which is below at the 8.2.
Would that be available if I was to request it from you?
Yes, sir. So we've got basically a depreciation schedule that has an outline of those fixed assets. So for sure, we can provide that. That'll have the more detail of how in these buckets they fall in line.
Do you mind if I go ahead and make that request right here, and you could submit it to the city manager as well as to myself, if that would be possible? Thank you.
We can do that.
Question. Looking at page, where did it go? Page 9 regarding infrastructure. There's a line item here about halfway down on the governmental activities. 2023 was $23,254. but for 2024, it's gone up by about 4 times and darn near 100,000. I'm just curious what changed. Is that we acquire something, or is this just maintenance or fixing roads?
You're looking at page 9. Which line item?
Oh, page 9, and it's about in the middle of the page, on the bottom half, I believe, yeah, on the bottom half, in the middle row, where it says infrastructure 2024 for governmental activity. This is not.
Yeah, and that could be road repairs, stuff that might have been capitalized during 24 that wasn't necessarily as much in 23. That's mainly, you guys don't have many roads that you guys manage or maintain, but if there is stuff, we would typically capitalize it depending on the likelihood of the life of it. I can pull that detail as well. I don't know the exact specific, but we can for sure provide that information.
Yeah, it would be helpful. I mean, it's not a huge sum of money, but just looking at the delta from one year to the next, it'd be nice to know what was the cause of that.
Yes, and that's a big buzzword too, infrastructure. I mean, we see it every day, so. Yes.
Any other questions? No? Okay, so I'd like to get a motion to consider acceptance of the fiscal year 2024 city audit financial statement.
I move to accept the audit for 2024.
I'll second.
Can we get a vote?
Aye.
Aye?
Oh, aye.
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 Okay.
Aye.
Show that unanimous. We'll push on to, thank you again.
Thank you.
Push on to item 9.2.
Discuss and consider approving the purchase of an enterprise resource planning system for the city.
Beth?
Mayor Pro Tem and Council, I will once again pass this item to our Finance Director, Jeff White.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. This agenda item is to consider purchasing an enterprise resource planning system, otherwise known as an ERP for the city. An ERP system integrates all business processes into a single unified platform. This centralization allows for real-time data access and improved accuracy, eliminating the efficiencies and errors associated with managing various systems. By automating routine tasks and workflows, an ERP system can significantly reduce manual intervention, saving time and resources, and reducing human errors. This automation will enable our team to focus on strategic initiatives rather than administrative tasks. While the initial investment in an ERP may seem substantial to some, the long-term cost savings are significant. By reducing waste and improving resource allocation, an ERP system can lead to substantial cost reductions. Currently, we pay Infomark roughly $11,000 a month for the billing process that they do for us. We also pay QuickBooks or Intuit about $675 a month for payroll purposes. The ERP will come to about $3,500 per month. That would include modules for all of our accounting, so it would eliminate the need for QuickBooks altogether. It would include payroll. It would include W-2s, all that kind of stuff on the payroll side. It would include an HR suite. It would include modules for code compliance and permitting, as well as an online portal where we would do all the billing ourselves instead of having Infomark do it. We would also, with this, we would need to hire an accounting clerk to help with that billing aspect. So the average accounting clerk in Texas makes about $40,000 a year. So that would bring, after benefits, it would be about a $65,000 position, roughly. With the cost that we're paying Infomark right now, we could hire that person, take on utility billing ourselves and have more control over that, and still spend less money than we're currently spending with Infomark. Now there's an upfront cost and there's a monthly cost. The upfront cost I've actually been talked to about 6 or 8 different companies that do this. to try to find one that I feel is the best option for the city. The one that I've kind of landed on was significantly less expensive than most of the others. Once I had decided that it was the one that I felt was the best option for us, I partnered with Ray Smith, our CPA, had him jump on a 2-hour call with them to run through a demo to make sure that it was going to work for what they're doing and be a sufficient movement away from QuickBooks. And I was able to negotiate with them, if we would like, we can split the upfront cost over 3 years instead of having to pay it all at once. That would allow us to spread that out if we choose to do so. And with that, with the upfront cost over 3 years, the accounting clerk and the cost of that software, we would still be spending less than what we're paying Infomark right now. And we would have not just the utility billing, but we would have an online process for permitting, code compliance, et cetera. Any questions?
Yeah, I got a couple questions. Thank you for that good presentation and the explanation. One of the things, and kind of is tangentially related to this, but at our last meeting, we were talking about outstanding debts that are owed associated with sewage and garbage services. Would this new system give you greater flexibility to address those sorts of issues so that you don't have to rely upon Infomark for that end?
The big advantage is that we could pull real-time data and not have to reach out and ask, because we don't have this data personally. We have to reach out to them and ask. Sometimes they're great, they get it to us within minutes. Sometimes we got to send a couple friendly reminders that we're still waiting on stuff. As with many contract, companies like that, where sometimes we're just not top of mind for them. With this, all information would be stored in-house. We would have access to it at any given time.
And with respect to the training or expertise of the person that would be administering, is this something that would be difficult for them to learn? Or, because you mentioned that, a standard clerk or something is about $65K a year, would that person be able to work this?
So that person would primarily work on the utility billing side.
Okay.
So myself, I would be involved. Ray would have access to it, obviously, for what they do on their accounting side. So there would be multiple people in it. Part of the upfront cost is implementation, setup, and training. So we would get training on the front end, and then obviously they're still available if we need additional work once we get inside it, once it goes live. This process, the reason that I'm bringing this up now, this typically is a 9 to 12 month build out process. So if we called them tomorrow and said we want to move forward with it, it would probably be around the new year before we had access to it at the earliest.
That makes sense. And regarding the flexibility, I know that there's been some issues with Infomark. I mean, Mr. Hertz over here, he's had a real hard go of it, and I know Bev has helped him out with it to get that resolved. Do you think that'll give us a better ability to try to prevent, the recurrence? Someone has to come back here and say this thing is not working. And I can only imagine the difficulties and anxieties created for Mr. Hertz.
Absolutely. It would bring the whole process in-house. We don't have to rely on another a customer service person from another company and how that conversation went with them, the back and forth to get something done. We would have the ability to handle it all in-house.
Okay. No, that's helpful. I think that's the only questions I have.
Thank you.
What's the upfront cost again?
It is $47,406. So split that up over 3 years, it's about $16,000 a year.
Can you repeat that number one more time?
47,406.
What are we getting from 47,406? Exactly.
So we've got the basics of the accounting, so it's general ledger, budgeting, bank reconciliation. It includes payroll, direct deposit, timekeeping, human resources, online pay stubs, accounts payable, purchases and requisitions module, utility management, which includes obviously the billing aspect. It actually includes meter reading if at some point down the road we get to the point where we need that. It is a community portal which handles permitting, code compliance. There is asset management. There's a document management where we could actually have move instead of, if you guys have ever been in our records office and see all the actual paper we have in there. There's a document manager. We could scan all that stuff in, have all that stuff online. We can determine what needs to be publicly available and what is internal, and we can assign roles to the public and to people within the office so that they have access to what they need without having to go dig through boxes of paper. And then, like I mentioned, part of that community development suite is permitting, planning and zoning, approvals, code enforcement, and that wraps it up. So there are other modules that can be added, and that's one of the nice advantages of an ERP, is that they're customizable. These were the only ones that applied to where we're at as a city today. And I'll give you, as an example, ASA was looking at something like this specifically for P&Z. They were wanting $10,000 for the first year just for planning and zoning and code enforcement, and $7,000 a year as the ongoing cost. So if you look at that as a portion of this and all the other stuff that we get here, and the fact that we get to get rid of the Infomark, the biggest part of our Infomark bill, they would still handle our operations and maintenance for the sewer system, but it would take the utility billing off of there, and we would actually be spending less on this than we are on that currently.
So we're looking at roughly $123,000 a year. How much is, like, so for $3,500 a month for upfront costs, $16K, and then for the accounting clerk.
So the monthly cost, the monthly ongoing cost for this is it's $34.68 a month.
Right,
as
so
it's
it's
currently
about
constructed.
$42K a year, right?
Yes, sir.
So when you add that all up, it's $123K. Like, what are we paying right now?
About $11,000 a month. So that's almost a perfect wash. It also gets rid of a $675 a month cost to QuickBooks, which comes out to around $8,000 if my quick math is right.
Okay, so we're talking about a $10,000 savings.
Yes.
So the pros is we have the information in-house. It costs less. We're projecting better customer service. What would be the cons?
The cons would be it is another person on payroll, but based on the fact that it's less than what we're paying Infomark, I think that still is a positive. But it is another person that we have on payroll. So when you look at all the additional costs, which I did factor into that number that I gave you. Obviously, at this point in this building, we are limited on space. So there would be a solution such as sharing an office with me, like our part-time planning administrative assistant does with ASA, until there was a more feasible option. We talked about some things, but obviously nothing definitive. To me, that's the biggest con, is just space. We're obviously in a position where we've filled up this building, so.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
I apologize if I missed it. The name of the company you selected?
The name is Cassell.
Cassell.
Yes. They were based out of Utah. They came into Texas a couple years ago and have done a few cities in Texas. They were actually out here a couple months ago implementing on the Fort Worth side. I don't remember specifically what city it was, but so they've been doing this for quite a while. And I think I said I reached out to like 6 or 8 different companies, did demos with a bunch of companies. And I think if I remember right, Ray's response after this was, if we're getting all that for that price, that's a great deal for an ERP, because a lot of the other ones are significantly more expensive than this. And this one satisfied everything that we felt that we needed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think part of what I like about this is that you can document, you can freeze documents, put them in a file, and they can be accessible for the public's purposes. I like that part very much. The fact that it's a wash, we had actually had a conversation earlier about this, and the fact that it's pretty much a wash, that appeals to me as well. I'm not particularly thrilled about bringing another person on staff, but again, you may have to suffer by that because it's probably going to be in your office. Yep. You'll have to make that sacrifice, but because we just are kind of limited in terms of space. The other part I like about this is that Ray Smith has kind of put his stamp of approval, and I've been here for 4 years, so I know that he has a reputation that precedes him, so I like that part. The maintenance cost, I think, was $35,000 or $35,000 $3,500 a month.
$34.68 per month.
Okay. Okay. And the fact that it's just going to be just more efficient for us and maybe eradicate, make the city more, what is the word I'm looking for? Just responsive and responsible to the citizen when it
More
comes.
accountable.
More accountable to the citizen when it comes to phone calls. Here's a problem that I have, and we don't have to defer to Infomark, which we have had some concerns with in the past. So,
Yeah, and, I'm sorry. One thing that I didn't mention, we pay a per connection fee to Infomark.
Right.
So for every resident that they bill, we pay $3.75.
Right. Yep.
As the houses are built that are already approved, that cost to them is going to go up exponentially. Whereas with this one, the only additional cost is if we're mailing out a bill.
Okay. The only other thing that I would say is that I would like to have had, your presentation was great and very understandable, but I would have liked to have had it in a written form to some degree, some bullet points that accentuate, the cost containment and, the advantage to presenting this to start with. That's all. Maybe in the packet.
All right.
Because there were a lot of numbers flying.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for the presentation. I, quite frankly, might be the minority up here on the council, but I'm not persuaded that this is really the way we want to go. I'm looking at the same math you are, and what I'm seeing here is a question as to how much are we going to grow government. If people don't want the city in the water business, they're certainly not going to want them in the billing business. CWD doesn't want to do the billing. Infomark is happy to turn it over to us. I'm worried about this getting out of control. You start getting involved in certain things under the auspices of it being quote unquote more efficient, and within a couple of years it's a monster, and that's my concern. I don't think that we are ready to do this. This is my opinion. I know that you might save a couple $1,000s, but the risk of, and honestly, my numbers don't work out. My numbers are actually that we're a little upside down on this. Because your time is not being included in this calculation, as well as other people's time. So one full-time person, software, and all this other stuff, I'm coming up at roughly starting off at a wash with the potential of it going the wrong way. So I'm not persuaded that this is the way we should go at this point. I would need to see the financials be a lot more favorable. At this point, I think the risk is too great to go in this direction. I think it grows government too quickly and too rapidly. Thank you.
Jeff, have we thought about maybe negotiating with Infomark?
We have not had a negotiation with them specifically. I know when I started talking to these companies, we were having some painful moments with Infomark. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what spurred this, was the customer service issues that we were having with them, and some of the conversation about trying to get away from using them. So that's what started all this, and it came to it can do a whole lot more on top of.
Do we have any data, ratio data when it comes to our constituents who's having the problems based off of the population of the city of McLendon-Chisholm?
They send a monthly report. There's a lot fewer complaints now than there were at the beginning of the year when we first switched over to them. Obviously, as is often the case when there's change, there's a little bit of pain in the beginning. So there are much fewer complaints now, but they absolutely still happen. And as Bev can attest with the situation with Mr. Hertz recently getting his bill adjusted, there was some back and forth. Mr. Ritz, I apologize. There was some back and forth, and it takes a little bit of time as opposed to walking down the hallway and saying.
So here's a little bit of my thought process. Like, one, what's our margin of error when it comes to doing business with? And then based off of that margin of error, are we below that or above it? Right? So one, do we even have a margin of error when it comes to that? And then two, if we do, where is it at when it comes to the ratio? Right? I would, if we have that, I would love to see it.
I can only speak to the 6 weeks that I've been here, and there have been 2 cases. One we resolved very quickly. One is still lost in a collection agency nightmare that we are trying to get. So in my 6 weeks, I've had 2. I am happy to look back through Conrad's stuff and see what might have been there before. But if you think 2 in 6 weeks, that's a pretty high number, considering the number we have on the Infomark account. Because trash is on every household in the city. So that's 2,300
We have about
rooftops
1,860 accounts with them currently.
with them currently.
I would still like to see numbers. Like, I mean, if there's 2 out of 1,800 in 6 weeks, right? I mean, if we're talking about, hundreds, then absolutely a shift needs to be made. But I would be happy to see like a margin of error, right? Before a decision is made, just to see, okay, how many within the last year or so that we've had problems based off of our population.
Absolutely. I will dig into that, and between what I can find in our records and our Infomark contact, we will get you a number.
Thank you. And then maybe, hey, go to Infomark. Can you beat this? Can you beat this along with bumping up your better customer service? Right?
Yes, sir.
Just a thought.
Yeah, along those same lines, you mentioned that this service is being offered in some other Texas towns. Have you had any communications with those folks to see how they liked it, or if what their thoughts are?
I have not discussed it with them individually. And I think one thing that I want to make sure that's known is that this is not just about utility billing. QuickBooks is not designed for fund accounting and municipals, and it's a service that we really need to get away from at some point. And this started with utility billing, but it's a lot more than that the city needs to, or I believe the city should move towards in the near future. And based on the lead time of creating it is why I'm bringing it to us at this point.
And you mentioned that there's a long lead time to get this in here. If we didn't act on this now, what's the downside?
If we wait until we think we need it, we're waiting.
No, not until we think we need it. I think there's some issues with just trying to digest some of these numbers. If we put this off, a month, is that going to create a problem downstream?
It's just going to push off our start date. So my thought was if we started this now and we could get it done in 9 months, we could have a January 1 clean start date. Now, there's no guarantee that it's ready by then, even if we approve it tonight. And that's the reality.
I think that's fine. I think kind of where Councilman McLendon and Mayor Pro Tem were going, it'd be nice to have some financials to compare apples to oranges, look at what the delta is between the two. I now understand that this is a broader scope, and therefore if it costs more, it may be worth it. But I think it would help us, certainly help me to kind of understand, does it justify this additional cost, possibly growing government to some degree, like Councilmember Day pointed out, but just so we know kind of what we're getting into beforehand, because at the end of the day, it may be more cost efficient to go this route, but it would help me to feel confident that, I'm willing to do that for these benefits.
Understood.
Would it be possible to have a representative of the company come up and do a presentation? Is that feasible?
I can certainly reach out to them. Like I said, they're based out of Utah, so I don't want to speak for them and say they'll definitely come, but...
No, we could do a video chat or however we could arrange that. I mean, to get some specific, eyes on folks and ask
very
some
confident
questions.
that they'd meet over a Zoom or a Teams meeting.
Yeah,
without
I don't
any
see
issue.
why, to add to the content of all this. I think that we would probably gain by doing something like that, gentlemen. If it's necessary, it's not going to hurt.
Okay.
And then Jeff, on my end, is there any way to, because it seems like you're asking for a very large package, but I'm very sympathetic to your need for technology. Is there any way that you can make a separate technology request aside from this that's going to be beneficial no matter which direction the city goes?
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking.
You don't like QuickBooks, you want a replacement.
Well, I think
So
that
what is the replacement? How much does it cost?
this would be the replacement.
So what I'm saying is can you employ this replacement without hiring staff and doing this huge expansion? Is this
Like, are there other accounting softwares that we could use? Is that what you're...
Yeah, what I'm saying is you're telling me you don't have tools. tools, and I'm trying to be responsive to your request for tools.
There are certainly other accounting softwares out there. ERPs is typically what cities use. And this was by far the most financially, fiscally responsible one that I was able to find with my research. So now there are phases of this, or these are modules. So we could cut out the planning and zoning or the code enforcement, but ultimately it's all stuff that I believe that would be beneficial to the city. So that's why I put it together with all the things that I feel like would be beneficial. So if we wanted to shave a couple $100 a month, we could get rid of one of these. But then we would be doing that process manually while everything else is going through the system.
Well, I'd like to at least see that offering, if you could, categorize and then, put a cost associated with each. I mean, if it comes like that, and then let the council make that decision.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and if you could break it down by just the software costs, startup, maintenance, and so forth, and then the additional personnel, because I think that's where Councilmember Day was concerned about having an extra body over here, which requires some other expenditures as well as retirement and those sorts of issues. Is that kind of where you're headed?
Yeah, in part, as well as just the overall philosophy of growing government. And I love what Floyd was bringing up earlier, which was, I would like to get the comparable to see that, because we are seeing an improvement from Infomark. I know it's not perfect. I know people have issues, but the question is are we ever going to get perfect? At what point are we kind of where we're going to say we can't improve upon this and still be more efficient? Those types of questions. So that's data that I think we need to have. And I look forward to seeing what that analysis is.
All right. Thank you.
So, Mr. Hall, on this, I'd like to push this out, and so I don't think we have to make a decision on this other than indefinitely push it out. How do we phrase that so that I foresee this going to the next city council, to tell you the truth? I mean, I want Jeff to have ample opportunity to collect.
The simplest thing is just for the council to take no action if that's what they want to
Okay.
do.
So that's what we'll do on this particular item. And then, Jeff, you should be able to get some things done, and we'll give you plenty of time.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. So item 9.3, Bev?
Okay, discuss and consider approval of a CAD Board of Director resolution providing a nominee to fill the current vacancy of the RCAD Board.
Now, Bev.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. An opening has come up on the Rockwall County Central Appraisal District Board. Each city that they work with is allowed to nominate a resident by resolution to be considered for this seat. We would like to present Tony Crawford as our candidate. Mr. Crawford has been a Rockwall County resident for 32 plus years. He has lived in McLendon-Chisholm for the last 4 of those years. He regularly attends our council and P&Z meetings. He was a member of our Charter Commission group. Tony is very actively involved in things that go on here in the city and holds no current elected position. So please consider the resolution for Mr. Crawford.
Thank you. Okay, I'll take a motion to consider approval of a CAD Board of Director resolution.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, open for discussion.
Yeah, Tony, do you mind coming up and answering just a quick question before we do this?
Yes, sir.
You excited to do this?
How you been? Yeah. It allows me to be involved in something regarding the city and the county and not actually have a lot of publication about it. So it's a fit for me.
Yeah. Do we have any other comments? Okay. So let's consider approval. Can I do?
I got a couple questions.
Okay.
When does the name have to be submitted? Like, what's the deadline?
We have to have our resolution in by March 31st.
Okay. Was the opportunity presented to the public?
Presented to the public, you mean advertised by the city to the public?
Yes.
No, sir.
Was there any interest from any others to fill the position?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I'll just say Tony makes a good hand, and I've seen him do some good work on the Charter Commission, and I'm very confident in what he can do representing us in this position.
I've known Tony for a couple of years now. I have a sense that he's very, very capable of handling this position. If we wish to open this up to other possible nominees, we could certainly do that. A little bit on the fence on that, but certainly he would be at the top of that list for me.
Yeah, those are all valid points, and honestly, I think, Tony, you know I love you, man. I think he's fantastic, and he and I have been friends now for a while. I met him a couple of years ago at a water meeting, in fact, a community water meeting, and he's good people, he's great people, he's smart. But in the spirit of fair-mindedness, I do think that we probably should open it up to others, even if he winds up floating to the top and being the guy, and we already know it, and maybe we don't know it. I don't know, unless somebody just shows up. He's fantastic. But I think that in the spirit of fairness, we do need to open it up to anybody else who might want to do it. I think that's just in the sense of what we should do. And I hate to say that because I think Tony would be great, but I do think if we got to the 31st, we should open it up, and I think that's where we should go. That's my opinion.
Okay. Is there a sense then that we should open this up? Is that pretty much a consensus?
Yeah, if there's a way that we can achieve this objective within the time frame, I'm not sure the process by which we would do something like this, and that's something I'd want to make sure that there was no issues with. How would we go about doing this? I just wonder if Mr. Holla might have some thoughts on advertising this or promoting it so that other interested folks could participate if they were so inclined.
I would say there's nothing legal governing it, so it's completely, totally a policy decision.
So would we then perhaps consider directing staff put this on the public on the website and getting a notice out to ask for submission of folks that might be interested? Can we do that?
We certainly can put it on the website. We can put it on social media, on the city's Facebook page if you would like, asking for interested parties. They would need to come forward right away because we do have to have the resolution back after your next council meeting. Okay,
well, within the time frame that we're working, then let's get some requests out there on whatever platform it is, and then it may reduce the number of applicants, but that being said, we're under a little bit of a time constraint, so that let's go ahead and go in that direction on this item.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I have one more question. How long have we known that this position needed to be filled?
I received this letter around towards the end of February.
Okay. Thank you.
So this was the first meeting to have it on the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to item number 9.4.
Discuss and consider action regarding a request directive to the council from the city administrator as outlined in an email to the mayor dated 2/25/25 that requires council members to take questions and information requests solely to and through the city administrator or through the city secretary.
So I made inquiry on this because I was a little bit taken back, and to be honest, I hadn't known what the what the policy was until I made a request, or really a comment saying that I would prefer not to go in that direction. And so I spoke with Bev via email, and she enlightened me with a 2005 ordinance that really spelled out the responsibilities of the city administrator. And I really appreciate that because it really clarified for me, you know, what position I wanted to take and what I could actually access. And so with that, I actually wanted to postpone that to have a little bit more conversation with you on that so that I could amend this particular item. And at this point, I think, Constable Day, did you have a question about this at all?
Yeah, I have lots.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to...
Yeah, so this is one of those things where, I work for a governmental entity, and these types of policies that exist all over the place, they're kind of routine. But what they do is they silo information. There are, if you go to the local ISD board, whether it be Rockwell or the other ones, you'll find that they have these types of policies. You have to go through the lead administrator. So it does put a lot of information through a single point of contact, and there's a lot of filtering of information. It's difficult to get, especially in large organizations, it's really difficult to get people that are within the organization to tell the city council, by the way, there's problems going on, and the administrator is not telling you these things. So it's about the flow of information in large organizations as well as small ones. And when I saw this directive come in, and I also got the same thing come back, but I immediately had revulsion the moment I saw it. You want to have the ability to engage openly to all aspects of the city so that you can make sure that it is in good working order. I mean, it's the one job that we have, is to make sure everything's functioning. And the last thing you want to do is set yourself up with what they call a Hayekian barrier. So a guy by the name of Friedrich Hayek got a Nobel Prize for discovering that an institution is only as smart as the weakest or the weakest link in that chain. And if you happen to have a weak link with respect to the city administrator or the city manager, whoever it happens to be, then the city is literally only as smart as that person. And I've seen this fail, this type of policy fail at other institutions throughout the state. I think when this came through, I was taken aback and immediately had revulsion to it because I've seen it have deleterious effects at those institutions, especially in higher learning. So I would like to see this directive stayed. That's my opinion. I don't think you want to be doing this, not only to us, but to any future council members, because you just don't want to have these information silos. I just consider them to be toxic. So removing these information silos, not just for us, but also for future city council members. I mean, you want to be able to come in there and have the council know what is happening and to have authentic information from people within the body, not just things coming from the city administrator, whether it's the current administrator or the former administrator. And to Conrad's credit, he never implemented this. And as a consequence, I feel like we were very well informed. I had direct contact. I know this was back there, but it was never enforced. And so I would like to see the ordinance altered, changed, or modified to allow not just this council, which most of us are leaving anyway, but future councils to be able to live and breathe and be able to understand what is happening in the city without a gatekeeper to that information. Thank you.
I'm not tracking. Like, I've read the email. Can you help me understand, like, why you want that narrative? Why you want that process?
Absolutely, happy to. I didn't write the ordinance. I was on council in 2005 because I was part of it when we hired the first city administrator. This is a standard ordinance to a city administrator position. I think you'll find if you poll any city in the area in North Texas, it's the rules that are in place. The reason I sent the email was because of a few inquiries from the current staff asking for my help to be the person that fielded the questions.
You mind if I maybe help on that? Is it okay?
So someone on the city staff was asking you to help them when it comes to communication with the dice. Is that my understanding?
Yes.
Okay. Why? Was it a contentious conversation, or was it something that they felt like it was something they shouldn't be doing, or it was a waste of their time, or it was taking up too much of their time? Like, what's the premise?
I don't want to answer for them, but in my opinion, they felt like that they were not able to get their job done because of all the questions that was coming their way that could have come through me, not to keep the information from anyone. I think you can poll the city staff that's in this room tonight, and they will tell you that I do not keep information from them. They hear everything that they need to hear. Now, are there some things that I don't share? Yes, because there are things that I shouldn't share. But they have felt like that they have not been able to get their job done effectively because of all of the interruptions.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll just say, as a former municipal employee, that's what Bev put out there is pretty standard. It's and it's a courtesy to her as well to know what it is that's being asked of staff, because if she's not made aware, then it kind of puts her in an awkward spot. And we want her to be engaged throughout this organization and to be aware of everything that goes on in this city, because that's what we hired her to do. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with asking a staff member a question if it's like an email and you've copied Bev in it, just so she's aware. And then she can turn around and answer you right back. I mean, it's not hiding anything. It's just a chain of command type of thing. That's
Mayor Pro Tem, if I can add just a little bit,
Yes.
because I tell Councilmember McLendon just cannot wait to hear from me. So Councilmember Day, I agree with you, but I don't want to change the ordinance. And I'll tell you, I like to blow everybody's mind at first. Here's why. We're actually talking about two different things. Councilmember Brewer just hit on one. The way we're set up, the council appoints this position. Okay, it is appropriate for the council to go through that position, the one that they appoint, as Councilmember Brewer said, the chain of command. Now, well, what if this counselor is an idiot? Like you said, only as smart as this person. I have no problem, and I think it's good for the department heads to be asked questions. In fact, I talked about this with Chief. Go to the captain. Hey, how's the chief? Is he a knucklehead or does he know what he's doing? That's perfectly appropriate from council. I got no problem with that. My understanding, and here's where my concern comes in, it was more than that. It was a legislative official, and that's the key phrase there, legislative official. It was a legislative official giving a order, a direction, this is what you do to a particular staff member. I say this to protect y'all. Everybody knows about legislative immunity. Well, when do you have it? When you're acting as a legislator. You do not have a legislative immunity when you're giving directive to a staff member. Why? That's not the job of a legislator. You pass law, you set policy. That's what you do. This position enforces the laws, enforces the policy. So in that situation, what you've got is, let's say you give direction to a staff member. They follow that direction, ends up in a lawsuit. We get in trouble. Well, guess what could potentially happen? Staff member says, well, council member so-and-so told me to do it. Oh, really? This is true? Guess what? We're going to bring you in the lawsuit personally because you weren't acting as a legislator. You waived that legislative immunity. Okay? So we're really talking about two different things. The role of the legislature versus a legislator absolutely wanting to question other staff members going, hey, I'm trying to find out general information about the person I appointed to this. Or, as Councilmember Brewer said, I got a question I just want to ask staff. I'm going to go ahead and CC the city administrator in on it. That is perfectly appropriate, and it's a fine line. You have to be very careful. You don't want to set up a system, and I've seen it happen. 26 years doing this, I've seen it happen a lot, where you've got staff members not liking or not getting along with or wanting the job of whatever, the city administrator, so they go around the city administrator and do this stuff to the council. That's a problem. Okay, that's an issue. You don't want that. But again, like I said, just quickly going back, asking Angela, asking Jeff, asking the chief, asking Asa, asking Mike, hey, what do you think of the city administrator, whoever it is, what do you think of the city administrator's job performance? How do you think they're doing? That's perfectly appropriate. You want to find, I encourage it, and it's best if the mayor does that, because the mayor position has the executive as well as legislative immunity. So the mayor could be the bridge, the gap filler, if you will, between that and the council. I've got that exact situation going on in another city, and it's being handled just like that. The mayor is actually interviewing and talking to you. There's some issues potentially with the city administrator, so the mayor is going directly already to 3 different department heads. And that's something maybe, I don't know, that they may bring back on the council agenda. But the whole purpose of that is the council appoints that position. They need to find out what kind of job that person's doing. So that is perfectly appropriate. But I think we're maybe conflating or intertwining too much 2 separate things. That's just my thought.
So I'm unfamiliar with the example you guys are bringing up, because the only thing that I've ever even remotely asked for all I know is my position. I mean, I'm not tied at the hip with these other guys, you know. What I know is that, you know, I asked Angela to bind my stuff together. That's the only thing, and it's a request.
Well, that's exactly what it is. It's all about that.
But what's here and what came in the letter was information. So we need information in a timely manner, or from the expert themselves that knows that information, sometimes in preparation for a meeting. And what this does is bar me. And I need to have that information quickly. Okay, now I will tell you, and we haven't talked about this yet, but our last city administrator was put under a system of prior restraint with respect to water. You know about this because we've talked about it. Mm-hmm. So he was censored. He wasn't allowed to talk about it, which is a very, very, it's a nasty form of censorship. So how are we supposed to go up to the city manager that's under prior restraint and ask for information if there's a guideline or ordinance like this in place? Because that is a real problem in this city.
Okay, the way I look at that ordinance, exactly what Councilmember Brewer said, if you want something immediately from a staff member, emailing that council member and CCing the city administrator on it, I don't think violates the ordinance. I think it's zero problem.
Because that's the key point. What this policy, though, which is what this is driving, is about information. That's all. Mm-hmm. I agree with the idea that no city I should not be able to go in and tell Jeff, you shall do this. I'm not your supervisor, right? I think you're an expert. As far as I'm concerned, we're colleagues. We're working together, you know, and I'm here to do the best I can to give them the tools to be as successful as I possibly can. But at no point have I ever issued anybody ever a directive. And I don't know if anybody else is here, but I mean, what we're doing is we're establishing a policy to refrain from giving the city council information based upon an incident that doesn't seem to apply to this at all.
I don't think that's what what I understand is we're already got an ordinance in place since 2005.
Well, I'm talking about this policy.
Okay, what is the specific policy? Can we
pull up the letter? Can somebody read the letter out loud, please? It should have been in the information packet, but yeah, go ahead and pull the letter. It was an email that was sent to the mayor on 2/25.
Oh, I might have that one.
Do we want to take an intermission so
yes.
she can find
this
it,
or
we
an
can find
thing.
this?
This is
or is this something that it's even, if we're going to talk about fact-specific issues, is it something that might be appropriate for executive session? Because I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, it seems like the ordinance that was sent is not pertinent to the policy decision that was being taken. They seem to be unrelated. And so maybe we need to get that figured out, but this is a very big deal. And we've been dealing with this prior restraint issue. And if you squeeze the wrong person in the city and you put them under prior restraint, then that lobotomizes the entire city council, which is what my concern is about this. So I would like to have that. If we want to go into executive session to discuss it, that's fine. But this is a big deal.
I saw the email, and so that's not binding on council. That's an email from the city administrator, and I think in general.
But it chills the staff.
No. If you send the staff an email and CC the city administrator on it, That's not chilling the staff. She's not, haven't seen anything and have no knowledge that the city administrator has told staff, do not respond to council unless they come to me first.
That is correct, and if I might speak it
Yeah.
up as one of the department heads, I actually like this idea because it keeps me accountable. It's making sure that if I have one of those days where I'm out of the office and you've got information that you would like to receive, I'm going to answer your question, but in this case, Mrs. Dibbins, she would be responsible for making sure that I've got the information back to you in a timely manner. This is not saying that you can't ask me questions. I prefer you CC the city administrator, whoever sits in that seat, when you ask me a question, because now they're involved. They're responsible for managing the city. I report to her, so that's going to help keep us a little more in line with the chain of
Okay.
custody.
Thanks, Chief.
And I can see how maybe it could have been phrased differently, but I didn't get from the email that it is for, the city administrator doesn't have authority to
Mr.
do
Holm,
that.
I think I'm going to recess this into executive session.
Okay,
Can we take a couple minutes?
you just need to announce what section we're doing it under. 551071, subsection 2.
Thank you. It'll be under that section. We are back from the executive session, and there was no action taken as a result. So, are we pretty satisfied with this? Do we want to pursue action on this, or
No, I think,
what are your thoughts?
I don't think that we need to take any official action from the dais at this point.
Okay, so there will be no action on this, and we will move on. Let's see, 9.5? I think 9.5.
Discuss and consider approval of the Blackland Water Supply Corporation franchise fee ordinance.
Yeah, and this was one of my own, and this is residual, from, I think, from last city council meeting, and to that point, we discovered that there had been an ordinance brought in back in August, along with the other two, August of 23, I believe it was, so there's no need for action on this per se. However, I did want to speak to the point of franchise fees and maybe get some clarification, and I don't want to beat franchise fees to death, and I hope that this is going to be the last time I speak to this point, but I did have Jeff White do some research some time ago, and I hope some of the complaints didn't emanate out of Jeff's office against me, but because I had him do some work, but and I circumvented the city administrator, but that's an inside joke, I guess. So I had him do some research on franchise fee participants in the city, and altogether currently there are 12. And of the 12, there are 9 that have paid their franchise fees. So franchise fees in general, just a definition, is it's a payment made by a utility company to a local government for use of public rights-of-way and other services. And it's really renting space from the city, is what they're doing. So they got their pipes laid down along the right-of-way of the city roadways, and they pay a legitimate, I think, fee for that. And obviously, it's been brought up in the past, is that these fees are certainly passed on to the users. The franchise fee itself is usually calculated as a percentage of around 2%, I think 2 or 3% of the gross receipts of that particular company. So in the instance of, let's say, of the 9 that are currently not in arrears on their franchise fees, Farmers Electric will pay in fiscal year 2025 $140,000. AT&T will pay $1,500. Atmos will pay $53,000. Encore will pay $40,000. Community Waste Disposal will pay $60,000. And for the total of the 9, it comes out to be a substantial amount of $301,000. And so that is a significant source of revenue for the city. Now, some people, we can make an argument that it's a pass-through and it's taxing the individuals, and that's certainly, I think that's a valid argument that could be made. And I think people will make that argument in light of what RCH is doing currently with the city in not paying. And certainly I understand that, but this is an ordinance. It's not an agreement between the city and these individual entities. It's an ordinance that's passed. It's currently employed with most all municipalities to some degree or another. And so, until any of these ordinances are taken away or reduced or voted against, then they should be in effect. It's interesting that franchise fees on water, I think somebody made a comment last time about them being not in the code. I spoke to our attorney, and she actually said that there is an allowance for those fees to be charged. And I'll quote from her, this is the water attorney: "An unincorporated city or town may make a reasonable lawful charge for the use of a city streets, alley, or public way by a public utility in the course of its business." So it is embedded in law, and I realize there may have been a court case out of El Paso here recently, but that was for an environmental service franchise fee. And somebody said that it was against water. It was not against water. It just happened that franchise fee happened to appear on the water bill itself. So until there's some other decision made, it appears that water companies can also be charged of franchise fees. So that being said, where are we currently? We sent the letter off to RCH and to High Point because they've been in arrears since August of 23 and have not paid into their franchise fees, have not paid to the city for their franchise fees. And I think the mayor has said that it's probably an incidental amount for RCH. I can't get any numbers together for High Point, but with RCH, if it's 2% of their yearly revenues, and they're behind 6 quarters, then their yearly revenue for 2022 was about $5 million. So 2% of that is probably about $100,000, 6 quarters, so it's probably about 150, and I may very well be off by $50,000 or so. That being said, these numbers are, guesstimates at best on my part, but it's more than, it's substantial. And so we have sent letters over to both of these entities and notified them that they are in arrears. And so the question is, what do we do from here? We have not gotten these letters back. My understanding, I've asked.
They had 30 days to reply.
30 days to reply.
We mailed the letters on February 21st, so
Right.
they basically have until
A couple more weeks.
10 days from now.
And that's perfectly fine, and we'll probably revisit this on the receipt of those letters. And I'm optimistic that they're going to respond in a positive way. But if you pursue this further, I think there are some solutions to this, to tell you the truth. The first solution is you can treat everybody equally. So everybody that is a participant in the ordinances that are applicable here, they all pay their franchise fees. So with Encore, I think paying, Farmers pays $140,000. So whatever the calculation is for RCH and High Point, whatever that is, then we would demand that they pay an equal amount. So treating everybody equally across the board. The other thing that can occur is we can have as a solution would be we do a carve out. You do a carve out for RCH and High Point and maybe Blackland into the future, and the water companies don't pay into it. That might present a problem with these other participants, and so. But that's the ability of the new council, and this will be pushed over to the new council to make these decisions. But that'll be for the new council to decide if they want to do an actual carve-out. I'm not convinced that that's a fair approach to things, but they will have the final say on that. And then the third solution to this is, again, treating all participants equally, and that is have nobody pay any franchise fees. And effectively, you're probably reducing revenues with the addition of High Point and RCH, you're probably reducing that yearly amount from $450,000 perhaps. So that is not maybe an acceptable consequence of saying no one has to pay, but that will be a consequence. And so, again, I think we'll be getting these letters back. I think there'll be some conversation more about this. Certainly, I am for enforcing the current franchise fees as ordinances that were voted upon, including the mayor, back in August of 23. We all voted positively for these. And so I'm for applying across the board. Now, that may change. I mean, if this is a Gordian knot for the new council to come on board and work through, then that'll be, their prerogative. But as long as I'm on council, I will push for, equality across the board. And I'm just looking for fairness. So that's my conversation, and hopefully one of the last ones about franchise fees. Anybody? This is just a conversation, a discussion. It's not any kind of action on this one.
Yeah, I think as a general matter, for these sorts of franchise fees, it's much like any sort of laws or requirements, just looking at these things even-handedly and applying them across the board so you don't create moral hazard in that the other utilities to which they may apply may choose not to pay them as well. And I do agree that, that there may be a rationale for carving these sorts of franchise fees applications out for a particular entity. I think you mentioned that it's sort of an indirect tax on individuals. It's kind of a pass-through. I think there may be some basis for that, but just as a general matter, I think applying things even-handedly across the board is a reasonable approach.
Hey, Jeff, on the audit, on page 9, franchise and sales tax for 2024 is down by $212,325. Could we look into that and see why, or do you already know?
I know sales tax was below budget last year.
Okay.
I don't know specifically. I wasn't here when that budget was set, so I'd have to go back and look and get you some more info.
Like, see how the franchise, how that has affected that, if it's affected the number.
Yeah, I mean, I can look and see what was budgeted, what we actually got. I don't have, obviously, RCH's financials to know what that number would be. We're all kind of making an assumption on that, but I can definitely see if I can figure out what the difference was.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
With Bev's permission, of course.
Permission granted. Absolutely. And Mayor Pro Tem, if I can jump in here for a minute.
Yes, ma'am.
I think what you will find on other than water franchise fees is that they are pretty much all over, statewide, electric, gas, telephone, telecommunications, all pay franchise fees to every city for using their public right-of-way. You will find water does not, because typically water is governed by the city itself. So water is not one that typically ever has a franchise fee, where the other utilities, it's the norm. It's the way it is.
And yeah, and I've done a little bit of research, and there are a number of communities like our own that have an independent water system, and they employ franchise fees. However, that being said, I'm going to enlighten you a bit. The cities of Tyler, Irving, and Denton have their own water companies. Okay, they have their own water departments. They have franchise fees that they impose on their folks. Can you believe this? So I was taken back, but it was entertaining to see that. And they do charge. It's the wear and tear of the trucks, I think. Not the trucks. That was that El Paso thing. But they have their franchise fees embedded in their own collection.
I was just trying to recall from the last meeting, and it seemed like there were some questions directed to Mr. Holla to look up or do some research on, but I was just blanked on what those questions were. It was like some legal research regarding the applicability of water to the franchise.
Yeah, I don't know about Holla, but what I did was, I think I had a short conversation with Holla just before I walked out, and I did contact our city, our water attorney, and I just had, and she did some research on this, and it was section 182.025 of the Texas tax code, and that's where that statement I made, an incorporated city or town may make a reasonable lawful charge for the use of city streets. So it's embedded in there. And then I've seen elsewhere in, I think it was in the water code, I saw some evidence of an allowance for franchise fees as well. So as far as my research went, I think there, again, I sought legal counsel on this. I did my own. That was insufficient, I felt, because I don't read the law that well.
And do we know?
But there are a number of cities that enforce franchise fees for water. And again, you've got testament by Tyler and Irving. They're inducing a franchise fee on their current customers, even though they themselves have run their departments. So it's pretty widespread when it comes to even that type of franchise fee being applied to water.
Okay, and I guess my other question is does Blackland currently run any water lines through city property?
No, but we, and this is going back to 23, and they don't, but it's in anticipation of them at some point. So it'll become in effect as soon as they start running line through the annex, when they annex in some of that's, I think, Sloan property, if I recall correctly. Was it Sloan? Was it Sloan? Yeah, it's one of the Sonoma Verde developments. Once they start laying piping, they start pumping water through that, then they'll be accessible to a franchise fee. So, yeah, currently Blackland is not, effectively being charged anything, but they will in the future because that ordinance exists. It's in an ordinance rather than some kind of mutual agreement with the water companies themselves.
So no checks today then?
No, lo siento mucho.
So my understanding of franchise fees and the way that they function is that they're effectively user fees. Is that correct?
I think you're asking me. Yes, I would say so.
Or they function as a user fee?
Yes.
And what is it that they're using that they're being charged a fee against?
They're using the right-of-way city street.
So they're doing, okay. So if they're using the rights of way that are owned by the property, effectively what they're doing is they're paying for that access. And
Yes.
then to what degree does the city have maintenance responsibilities over these locations?
I really don't know. I might defer that to our city administrator or Michael. Michael, could you help me out on that?
Sure, there are streets, our rights of way, so we maintain them. If there's something in there that they need to go down and fix, of course, that's going to be on them, if that's your question.
So if there's something that needs to be fixed and the city pays for it and they're not paying a franchise fee, effectively the city is covering that on their behalf, right?
Well, we wouldn't do that. If there's something, yeah.
So would we preclude them from having access to that property prior to them having a contract agreement with, in this instance here, they're going to be moving pipes here in the near future. So they're not, the company that would be repositioning the pipes wouldn't have a contract with us. They would have a contract effectively with RCH in this case, and there would be that contract between the two. They wouldn't come to us to negotiate a contract for those repositioning those pipes.
Yeah, that wouldn't between us. So we would also have ordinances that says, hey, look, if you're going to come in, if you're a contractor and you're going to come in and you're going to rework on something and mess up our streets, our ordinance says you got to pay to fix it back, or our easements, or our ditches, or whatever it is that they're sending, whatever. So yeah, that'll cover that. Now it's between them who would go and do that. Yeah.
So would that action be precluded without our consent being given? In other words, would RCH, for example, have to come and say, hey, we're going to have our pipes relocated. We need your approval on this. They can't just unilaterally reposition the pipes as they have in the past.
Yeah, they would have to, if they stuck something in, because they get an easement from us or something like that. If somebody's just laying pipes down, they'd work out an easement or something like that we let them do that. Now, that's very normal to happen, in cities. And the easement agreement would cover like what standards they have to go to put the stuff back if they dig it up, and what they're going to have to put back, things like that. Yeah. That's different than the actual use of the rights of way. Those aren't necessarily the same thing.
I have one question. So if if we're charging a franchise fee for use of the right-of-way, a question that was brought up last time was if does that apply to every resident of the city's bill or just the ones where they actually cover, where they're actually in public right-of-way? So it would just be, if it was Sonoma Verde, it's just Sonoma Verde residents having to pay this.
Yeah, and that was a question that I had also, and I really don't know. I think it's spread across the entirety of the population of the city, but somebody can maybe...
Here's
maybe
the
not.
beauty of that. We'll never know. The franchise fee is charged to the franchisee. It'll be charged to RCH. It'll be charged to High Point. It'll be charged to Blackland. RCH will pay it. Blackland will pay it. High Point will pay it. How they recoup or do or handle or whatever that fee, that is not something they have to tell us or share with us or inform us about or anything like that. They don't have to do any of that. It is, hey, this is a franchise fee. We can only do it on streets that we own, because as you read from 182.25 of the tax code, it's streets the city owns. So whatever, or other rights of way that the city owns. So however we're charging that, however they decide to pay it, or from what source they draw the funds to pay that, we have no say in.
Is there any more discussion?
So what is the, I mean, other than just simply having a general conversation about these things, what is it that we were hoping 9.5 would generate that we have on here?
Well, we'll be receiving the letters from RCH and from High Point here in the next couple of weeks, and if that adds to further conversation, then we'll attend to that. But at this point, the actual 9.5 became a little bit moot because Blackland Water Supply has already had an ordinance applied to them that we voted in back in 23. So I just used this as a forum for discussion in general about franchise fees, trying to evidence some information on that and some understanding as to where we're going on this, and the more likely event that with that those letters coming back to us, we may not have as a body here be able to act on that, but it will be a future body, and they'll be able to make decisions themselves on how they want to enforce franchise fees or not.
I mean, it seems to me like a franchise fee is, I mean, you have a choice between raising income through franchise fees, user fees, people doing, transacting with the city or within the city through sales tax or whatever it is, or you could hit them with property tax. And I think that I'm one of those guys, as everybody knows, hopefully, if you don't know, I'm one of those guys that is a big advocate for eliminating the property tax. And so you've got a choice where you can go from an involuntary property tax, it's kind of floats up whatever the city's going to do annually, or you can go to a voluntary franchise tax system where hopefully the franchisee, whoever it is going to pass it off in a proportional way. So in so much as you reduce your consumption of, in this case, water, you pay less tax. That's not something you see with property tax, which always seems to invariably go up, even though we keep cutting the rate. It's largely because it floats up on the appraisals. So it's one of those things where if you put in a franchise fee, and let's say it generates an extra $150,000 for the city can then turn around and reduce its property tax rate by the exact same amount in the very next budget, and it winds up being a wash, but it does create a more positive move towards a voluntary tax system versus an involuntary tax system. I mean, I'm in agreement with Governor Abbott's goal to try to get the property tax system fixed in the state. I mean, it's gotten out of control. It's almost like a second mortgage that you can never pay off. And I think we need to start looking at these franchise fees. This is the traditional way, from my understanding, that cities in Texas have raised revenue in the past. It's a standard way. This is not punitive towards Blackland or RCH or High Point. This is just, hey, they're using our stuff, you should pay for it, not just simply rely on property tax owners to pay for it. To me, I see it as a subsidy. It looks like the city council voted for it unanimously. I think Brian McNeil even voted for it in 2023. I know he's out there saying that he's opposed to it now, but that's because RCH is involved, and you know how that is when he and RCH start talking. So, with respect to with respect to my position on this, I think franchise fees in general applied to water companies is completely fine if the city council is then willing to use that to buy down the property tax rate. Thank you.
And that's something that that will be forwarded to the next city council if they want to so do that. And
Absolutely.
certainly in their prerogative and their wheelhouse to do so. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to correct something because I looked it up to see who voted for what on this back in 2023. And Mayor McNeil and Councilman McLendon were both absent that day. They didn't vote on it.
Fair enough. That's reasonable. Yeah, if I got it wrong, then I got it wrong, and I apologize to Mr. McNeil. I'm misrepresenting that.
Item number 9.6, if you will.
Discuss and consider action to amend the resolution regarding agenda preparation, to wit, paragraph C, to read, "At the beginning of each city council meeting, and so indicated on the council agenda, just after the call to order, the presiding officer of the council shall afford the council the opportunity to alter the final order of business for the day's council agenda. Setting the final order of the agenda shall be accomplished via majority vote, and care shall be taken not to deliberate on the agenda items. The presiding officer of the council meeting shall be required to follow the approved order of the agenda unless a change is deemed necessary and granted via 2/3 vote of the city council." Note, change text is in italics.
Okay, can I get a motion to discuss and consider action?
I'd like to move and consider action on the amendment to a resolution regarding agenda preparation.
I'll second.
Okay, floor is open.
So this is just simply a minor tweak. This is one that we've been going back and forth on for a little bit. It's just kind of dialing it in and making sure it works. Again, this is something that doesn't affect me. I have a rolling resolution here on the city council to have that indicated on the council agenda. There's been kind of a struggle to convince or to persuade, let's just say the mayor who tends to publish these things. He's opposed to this. And so he requires me to put that rolling agenda item on there. So this is really about putting it on there just so that it's reflected into the future for the future council. Like I said, it doesn't affect me. This is a standard thing that you find in Robert's Rules of Order. You can find it actually in many city ordinances regarding these types of preparation things. This is just really standard language that I lifted actually from another city mostly. So the words "and so" indicated on the council agenda, when I originally wrote it, the intention was for it to appear on the agenda, and because it wasn't so stated, they wouldn't put it on unless I made a formal request for it to be put on. So even though I thought that the original resolution clearly implied that that needed to be the case. So this is just simply rectifying that. This was also part of the last packet of stuff where we kind of went back and forth, reduced the time or whatever, and I said, well, there's one thing in particular, we passed that. This was the second one, and it's just an oversight. I wish that we'd grab both of these and pass them simultaneously. And all it does, like I said, is just when you come into the agenda, again, it's standard Robert's Rules of Order, you're applying that, and effectively the deciding body is going to decide the business for that body, and the order in which that is going to be conducted. So that's pretty standard stuff. And again, if you, I refer you to not only Robert's Rules of Order, but other city ordinances that are very similar.
Michael?
I don't have anything.
Okay, so you're asking, like, once the meeting gets started, to have the option to reorder, like, the agenda items that we go over, and then stick to it throughout the meeting? Is that what you're?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So it allows that the council, whoever that council is, will have the ability to do so rather than having, let's say, as a presiding officer that wants to move around all over the thing. What it does, it allows him to say, hold on here, we've said this is the order, and it's locked in. And if he wants to change it, he has to get consent from a supermajority at that point. Yeah. Again, this is from Robert's Rules. This is not me. And effectively, the only change this is doing is just adding the words agenda approval. That's all it's really doing, is guaranteeing it there. I had to employ it earlier, and just a little history on this. I had to employ it earlier. They didn't want to put it on, and so I had to employ a parliamentary procedure to be able to get it done. And so this just bypasses that and just keeps it on there.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, so let's go ahead and put this to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 9.7, which is Angela.
Discuss and consider action on canceling the 22nd of April 2025 council meeting as previously scheduled.
Okay, again, I got an email on a request to consider canceling the 22nd of April's meeting, and after a lot of back and forth with that email, I got the impression that I was being asked to favor this or not favor it, and I got a little confused, and so I decided that it really wasn't in my purview to make a decision on this. Perhaps they were just requesting my opinion, but I got the sense that they were asking something more definitive. So I decided to say, let's put this before City Council and, get their feeling on the possibility of canceling this last meeting. And I'm going to defer to the city administrator to provide information as to why that would be. She provided a lot of information as to the possibilities that it might be in our best interest. But that being said, I did want to open this up for a conversation across the entire council. So Bev, take it away.
Absolutely, thank you. Early voting begins on April 22nd, which is the council meeting. It happens here in the council chambers. It runs through April 29th. The equipment will stay in place until Election Day on May 3rd, and it will be picked up on Monday after, so May 5th, May 6th, by the County Elections Department. In the past, we have used the fire station to hold a city council meeting during elections. The fire station, while lovely, Chief, please don't take this personal, the acoustics are not real good. We do not have a good sound system over there to use. Our citizens have gotten very accustomed to not having to be here for the meeting, to be able to sit in their recliner and watch it at home, and I don't blame them. It's much more comfortable. So that is why the suggestion went out to consider canceling this meeting, simply because this chambers will not be available and the fire station is really not ideal.
And I appreciate you in joining me in that conversation back and forth that we had. And again, I got to a point where I just went, this is above my pay grade to make a decision of some sort. If that's what you were asking me to do, or maybe you were just asking for input and I misinterpreted. With that being said, I think I really did need to bring this to council and present it to them and request some of their considerations on this. So, Michael, you want to open this up?
Yeah, I mean, are there any sorts of decisions that are key that need to be made, that we anticipate that need to be made on or about that time for this? I mean, that's the bigger issue, I think, and then trying to figure out a way, well, it may be difficult to have a meeting here. Is there any way we could advance it to an earlier date if needed? And I don't know, when do they set up the voting machines? That's probably on, what, the Monday before?
They will set it up the Thursday before because Friday is Good Friday. So they are really going to set up quite early that week here in the council chambers because of the Good Friday holiday.
Okay. So that's my question. Is there anything that's key that we need to make a decision on or about that time?
Yeah, potentially, yeah.
I don't want to obviate our opportunity to have a meeting in and around that point in time. Who knows what considerations we may be up against? I don't want to lose the opportunity to have a last meeting, and I think that we can work around this. I think that personally, we've had it in the firehouse in the past. We can do that. You remember what my request was, is that we fire Sheriff Steve for one night and use those monies to apply to having a professional come in and record it. Now, will they get live feed? They may not. They may. I don't know. I'm not technically savvy on that. Is it a requirement that we have a live video for the folks out there? Okay, so that being said, there's a delay in providing that. I understand that, but next day we could get that out on the web. Yeah. So and I've seen this with other commissioners' court similar to that. They have a live feed, but if they don't have a live feed, it's up there the next day. I think I've seen it over at Heath, the same thing, because as a matter of fact, I've waited a week before they had their video on that. So again, I don't want to lose the opportunity to have, personally, I don't want to lose the opportunity to not have a meeting. And if it isn't by law that we necessitate having live feed, then we have the options really to do something different, and we can record this, in my mind.
I mean, to that end, sorry, just to respond to Mike, the kind of things that are kind of floating out there, and I don't know exactly where we are, maybe you can fill me in on this, Bev, but there's a PID negotiation going on, right? And that could be, I'm expecting that to come up before us sometime in the next month, right?
The initial resolutions will be on your next council agenda, and then we have to do our public notice process, and then there will have to be a final approval. On or about that time, the May 8th meeting will probably be acceptable to them. I would have to check. Because I just got all of that after this agenda was posted.
So it appears that there may be some need for us to have that meeting. I certainly don't want to lose the opportunity to have it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hesitant to have the tail wag the dog on this thing. And it seems to me that this PID issue, I would like to have an opportunity to weigh in on that before sometime in May, given a contemporaneous discussion of the council members and the folks that are going to be negotiating that PID. Even if we have to move our meeting up. I don't know if there's a limit on how far we can move it up, so that we can discuss this, anticipating that it's coming up prior to that. I guess you mentioned it's Good Friday, they're setting up on a Thursday. Would it be possible to even have a meeting on a Wednesday, but the day before they set all this stuff up? Or is that going to be a P&Z meeting?
P&Z is on Tuesday.
There was a commitment on some.
There is an HOA
outside. That's what
meeting
it was.
that Wednesday. That week has P&Z and an HOA meeting that is committed here. But we need to be careful moving it up on the PID, because we may not have had the publication time that is required within, I have to check the days, Mike, to see. We may not, if we move the council meeting up, it may be too soon to do the PID based on the notices in the paper. I'll have to research it.
Yeah, it seems that we need to kind of look at the options here to get some timelines. We don't have to make a decision on this evening, do we?
No, I don't think so.
Well, I think that I don't, I think the question that's before us is, are we canceling the meeting? And I think that we're not. I think we need to direct them to not cancel the meeting, to maintain the currently scheduled meeting for that night, which is April. Is that what's being asked, is to cancel it?
Yeah, we're just going to reschedule it.
Well, I think it's best to keep a regular scheduled meeting for that rather than move it up or move it back, because it's not going to work if you move it forward, is what she's saying. I think if you just keep it regularly scheduled.
And then it would be, you're anticipating having it over at the fire department on that evening?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I'm willing to do that, and then set up an iPhone and just record it.
Yeah, I mean, the PID meeting, I want to, if worse comes to worse, I think this is the least burdensome way to address this issue. But that's just my opinion.
When's the last meeting for this diocese?
April 22nd.
Okay.
I know last year it was canceled, but I do think if there's a pressing issue that we need to address, whether it's the PID or whatever, then we look to figure a way. But like I said, last year it was canceled. There wasn't
Yeah, I don't recall, but I think there may be several pressing issues that we have to attend to. So again, I just don't want to lose that opportunity.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's beyond us to be able to go over to the firehouse and work with the folks over there and get an adequate recording that we can put on the social media or whatever the next day or the day after that. I don't think it's beyond our capabilities, so we're not children here.
So we're going to take, we don't require action because we haven't canceled it, right? Okay, so it's not, okay, so we're basically, do we need to take any kind of vote? What's the question before us then?
Consider action on cancel.
I mean,
The only
other
action,
than,
the only action you would take is if you chose to cancel it.
I understand now. Okay, thank you.
So there will be no action on this. Thank you, Mr. Holla. Okay. So, Councilman, member reports and announcements. I'll just go down the line and pick on Mike again. Michael?
I've got nothing.
Okay. Mr. Floyd? Mr. Jerry?
We have our third town hall on the city charter this coming Thursday evening at 6 p.m. This will be the last one before spring break,
Okay.
and then we'll probably have one or two after that going into April.
How's your attendance doing on those?
First one was a little light, second one was a little better. I think as we get closer to the election, and also Angela was telling me next week is when we're expecting the charter to be sent out to every voter in our city. So I think that's going to get up some more interest as well.
Good. Maybe drinks and cookies and stuff like that. I guess feeding the folks?
Yeah, well,
No.
bourbon and cigars.
No, well, we'll push on. Yeah, drinks, I was really alluding to, soft drinks, but soft drinks, I think we're a dry county, aren't we? I don't know, we might be. Okay. Mr. Day?
Nothing from me.
Mr.
Wait,
Tucker?
one thing.
Wait 1 moment, please. I knew I was going to have to interject myself here. So you have in front of you, council, the information on our spring cleanup, which will be Saturday, April 26th, and it is located here at City Hall. For the public, the information will go on the website and social media after our Easter extravaganza, which is Saturday, April 12th from 10 to noon. We currently have 5 vendors signed up, 1 sponsor, and a call out for volunteers. The last thing I have to share, I'm going to get to be Vanna White. Because we have available for anyone who wants to show their support to the city these lovely yard signs. They are 2-sided, so you can put them out in your yard. You may have seen them when you pulled in.
Bev painted them herself.
Yeah, Bev did not. They are available for a small donation to the city, and they come included with the stand. So if anyone is interested, please see us. $5.
So appreciate that. That's very, very nice. And I will call this meeting to an end. Thank you. Adjourned.
By the way, this